back to the pumpkin patch here in Chatham Center. We're about 2/3 of the way through the season. Again, we planted the pumpkins back in late April, early May. We pollinated the first pumpkin around July 1st. And currently we have 2 plants growing in this garden. We have one to the east and one to the west. The first thing I want to show you is what happens to a pumpkin when it gets a fungus and it starts to rot. This pumpkin had fungus around the stem, and it went unidentified for a period of time before there was a hole created in the stem. Once a hole is created, if it's a small hole, you can patch it with a mixture of diatomaceous earth and fungicide. But if you catch it too late and the hole becomes too big, which is what happened in this case. Now this pumpkin was approximately 400 to 500 pounds before it started to rot around the stem. You will see, and at this pumpkin would have been much bigger than the other pumpkin that we're going to show you, based on the main vine and the stem. It's approximately 4 inches in circumference compared to the one over here. It's much smaller. The next thing I want to show you is the importance of trimming and cutting off the tertiary vines throughout the season. Now watch as I go into the pumpkin patch. I'm going to identify a tertiary vine. This is a tertiary vine that we're going to cut off right at where it starts on the secondary vine. So we can pull that right out and discard it, because that takes a lot of energy out of the pumpkin plant. So the identification of the tertiary vine is quite easy. Identify the main vine, which in this case, this pumpkin started growing on the main vine, which is right here. The secondary vines would be right here. Okay, now follow the secondary vine out until you find a tertiary vine. And so this would be a tertiary vine. But we're going to leave this on because we have a new pumpkin growing, which is going to replace the pumpkin that is starting to rot. So I'm going to leave that one on. And here is another tertiary vine off a secondary vine. We're going to cut that. So my plan for this pumpkin plant is to cut the pumpkin that's starting to rot, and we'll show you what it looks like inside. Then I'm going to try to establish another pumpkin so that I can get that to grow over the next month and a half. Another important aspect of pumpkin growing is not to leave the old pumpkin leaves laying in a pile, because they'll draw squash bugs. So as soon as you cut them, you want to discard them and get them as far away from the pumpkin patch as possible. So we're going to set these off to the side and then get rid of them. The next thing I want to show you is the importance of eradicating and removing damaged leaves. For example, here's one that is starting to get really old and ratty due to powdery mildew and just old age. So what we'll do is we'll cut that right off and pull that out and get rid of that. This does not have any insect damage. It's just an old leaf from the main vine. And you'll notice that in many cases where the old leaves die off and you cut them, new leaves will start to establish. And here's an example on the same secondary vine. So we leave that for photosynthesis and for the pumpkin to continue to grow. If there's no leaves on the plant, the pumpkin will not grow nearly as fast. On this pumpkin, which is doing very well, we're going to measure the pumpkin, which we do on a daily basis, and we record the growth. There's 2 ways to estimate the weight of a pumpkin. One is the circumference method, and the other is the over-the-top method. The first method we're going to show you is the circumference method. So yesterday, this pumpkin was 156 inches in circumference. And we've been averaging about an inch a day, 1 to 2 inches a day. And you want to measure it around the widest part in the same spot each day. So we're roughly 13 feet 1 inch, so it grew 1 inch today. So that's 157 inches. The other method to measure is you take that circumference and then we go over the top. So we go over side to side from ground to ground at the peak.
8 inches.
So that's 92. 92. So there you have two different methods of measuring the approximate weight of the pumpkin. There's a table that you can get offline or in a pumpkin book that we have, where you can take that value that you've measured, either the circumference or over the top method, and it'll give you a weight, approximate weight. We believe this pumpkin weighs about 800 to 850 pounds at this point in time. One of the last important items that I want to stress is during the last third of the season, you want to start spreading high potassium fertilizer. What we have is 0062, and we got this from Tertiary. And we spread this once a week on the ground, and we just kind of spread it by hand over the entire plant, and then I water on a daily basis. So currently I was in the process of watering. At this point now, we're going to show you what the pumpkin looks like inside. Again, this was a magnificent pumpkin when it first started, and it was growing approximately 25 to 35 pounds a day, and it was quite unfortunate that it got the fungus and a hole was established in the stem. But at this point, we're going to cut it open and we're going to give it to our pigs to eat, because it's a wonderful, delicious item for the pigs. So here we go. So you can see how thick that was. If I cut the other one open, it wouldn't be this thick. I can tell that this was a very heavy pumpkin. I can also grab some seeds out of it to see if they're mature enough to save. Now here's the seeds, and they look like they're mature enough to save, so we may save a handful of these. And we'll dry them out and we'll save them, and we'll plant them next year. But again, this pumpkin will be good eating for the pigs. That's like 70 pounds. After we measure the pumpkin each day, we put our blankets and coverings back over the pumpkin to keep the sunlight from hardening the outside of the shell. We want to keep the shell as soft and tender as possible so that it's easy to expand as it grows and it doesn't crack. If it rains, you want to take it off so that it doesn't create mildew and rot the pumpkin.